Hey, in this tutorial we will see how to restrict certain users from accessing pages or services in Angular application using CanActivate. All the authentications are done using backend service, and it can either be a custom API or an auth-based authentication like Google Firebase. I wrote a simple backend which checks if the name is code and password is space and returns true or false. Server is running on Node.js using Restify plugin. In a real project, we need to integrate with database to fetch respective user information, and password should always be encrypted before saving. I have created an Angular project using ng new AuthGuard and opened it in Visual Studio Code. Since my Angular CLI is buggy, so I need to install Angular dev kit manually. We'll run ng serve again. In app component HTML, we will use router outlet to navigate to different pages. And register all URLs in approuting.modules.ts. We'll export class approutingModules and import the same in appmodule.ts. and add it in imports. We'll create two components, home and login, using ng generate component home and ng generate component login. And in routing module, we will import router modules and routes from Angular router and declare a constant of name routes of type routes and add two paths to it. For path home, load home component and for path others, we will use wildcard ** and load login component. In ng module, we will import router modules for route and pass the routes variable and export the same router module. In the provider, we will keep it blank. So now in the browser we can see that the app loads fine. Now in login component.html, we will add two input field, name and password. We will use two-way binding. And on click of the button, we will get the login details from the server. login component, we will define the login function and variable name and password. Got some error. Okay, in app module TS, we need to import form modules from Angular Forms. And add it in imports. Now it's loading fine. Let's create a authorized service using ng generate service authorize. Import HTTP from Angular HTTP. Initialize it in constructor. And then we will define a function getAuthToken and call our REST API using post method and pass the name and the password from the input field. And return the response JSON. And if any error occurs, just console log the error message. We will use the authorized service in our login component TS and initialize it in constructor. And in login function, we will call the getAuthToken with name and password. And on promise result, we will check if res.valid is true. Else alert login fail. If login is valid, we will store it in local storage. For normal authentication, we use local storage. For sensitive information like banking and all, we use session storage. Because in session storage, on closing the browser or on closing the tab, the information are destroyed. I already made a video on this. Check out the video for difference between session storage, cookies and local storage mentioned in the description below. We will use the plugin ngx web storage. We'll import HTTP module since we are using it in service layer and add it in import, and similarly we will import ng to web storage. In login component.ts, we will add authorized service in providers and import local storage service from ngx web storage. and initialize the same in constructor. When the login is valid, we will save the user details in local storage user variable and navigate to the home page using router. Again some error. Okay, we need to import toPromise. Now we can see that on login it navigates to home page. Let us edit the home page and populate the welcome with username. In component, we will retrieve user details from local storage service. And assign the name to username. We can see that welcome code. And if we log in using Paul, it shows welcome Paul. We will add a logout option. So in home component, we will add logout button and call a logout function. I'll just copy it from login component and paste it in home component and edit it accordingly. In browser, we will log out and try to access the home page. We are able to access the home page, but the username is not showing because there is no logged in user. We will now restrict unauthorized user from accessing this page. For this, we will just create a service AuthGuard using ng generate service AuthGuard. In the service, we will implement CanActivate from Angular routers and initialize local storage service in constructor. And in CanActivate method, we will check if user exists, and if user is valid, return true. Else return false and alert not logged in. Okay, it didn't work. We need to add it in app routing. We will add CanActivate in home path and use AuthGuard service. We will use a cool name AuthGuard instead of AuthGuard service and can define different types of AuthGuard and assign the same to particular path. Okay, error. Okay, we need to add the AuthGuard service in provider of app module TS. So now when we try to access the home page, it throws me error not logged in and does not load the page. We can define our own not authorized page and redirect on failure. Now we restrict a user from accessing a child routes. We will generate a child component using ng generate component child. And put it under home component for path ch. In the browser, we can see that we can access the child component. So in app routing, we will use CanActivateChild. Which will authorize all the child component using AuthGuard. We can have multiple children to be scanned. I will just comment it to keep it simple. And in AuthGuard service, we will implement CanActivateChild and have the same logic as above. We'll change the alert to differentiate it. So we are able to access the same home page without login. But when I tried for the child component, it throws me error not allowed. And if I log in successfully, I can able to access all the pages. First method is mainly used for authentication and the second one is used for authorization. That's all for this tutorial. If the video is of any help, then hit the like icon. For other Angular, Cloud and Node.js tutorials, subscribe to the channel CodeSpace and click notification bell icon for upcoming live sessions. For any queries, comment below. Thanks for watching.